Good evening and welcome back to the vBrownBag podcast. I am your host tonight, Josh Atwell, and with me we have Alan Renouf from VMware. Alan, how are you?
I'm pretty good, Josh. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. I'm very excited about the new launch yesterday of what was it, 5.5 Update 1, and you're going to show us some new PowerCli goodness.
Exactly. I'm more excited about today's launch, actually, Josh, which was PowerCli 55R2.
There you go. Yes, indeed. I saw some really nice nuggets in there, so I am looking forward to seeing what you had to present tonight. So, a little housekeeping first and foremost. For people who aren't familiar with the show and haven't attended with us live, welcome. We're glad to have you. If you want to follow along with us and be part of the conversation throughout the podcast, the best way to do that is either in the chat window of GoToWebinar, or the way most of us use it is with Twitter using the vBrownBag hashtag. You can always mention us with @vBrownBag, and of course, we'd love it if you followed us. A little bit of information. We are a global entity now. We have podcasts all across the world with US, Asia Pacific, EMEA, and Latin America, all going strong. You can see the schedules on the screen now, or you can get more information about that at professionalvmware.com/brownbags. As I mentioned before, our guest tonight is Alan Renouf of VMware, and I am your host, Josh Atwell at vtesseract.com. You can find me on Twitter at Josh underscore Atwell. Josh underscore Atwell. That is my name. I'm very clever with my Twitter handle. And equally clever is Alan at Alan Renouf. All right, Alan. Well, with that, I have one more piece of business. You may have seen this announced today, and if you have, I hope you will jump on and also take the survey. But we have put together a little community survey to gather some information about the impact that participating in the VMware community has had on your career, whether it be your job or just your professional development. We're really interested in getting some feedback. It helps us understand the value of what we're doing, and allows us to kind of focus our efforts, and also just to give us a good litmus test on what people find are effective mediums to engage in the community. So hit that bit.ly address for those of you that are just listening and not looking at the screen. It is bit.ly ly slash vBrownBag survey. We try to keep it simple for you guys. So let us know about what your community participation, how it has impacted your career. And with that, I am going to change presenters over to you so that you can drop the
Thanks, Josh.
goodness.
I didn't see that survey, but that's really interesting, actually, because the community has made a huge impact on my career and my life. So I'm definitely going to go there and fill that out.
Yeah, so to pass a little time while you're getting set up and sharing your screen out, I will say that I've reviewed some of the initial responses, and it has been quite evident that some people have received considerable gain in their career, professionally, and a lot of it was monetary, because we do
Hmm.
add some questions in there about, do you feel like you got a bump in pay or bonuses due to your participation in the community, whether it be doing a VMUG, just gained additional knowledge, perhaps being a presenter and things like that. So yeah, there's been some really interesting responses that we've gotten so far.
I can go one better than that. I mean, if it wasn't for the community and me getting involved really early on, I wouldn't be sat here right now in California. I'd still be in the UK.
Yeah, Nick Marshall, one of the vBrownBag crew in Asia Pacific, he actually put a post together on his blog recently, talking specifically about the importance that a couple single tweets had made in his career, in building confidence in the community, and the information that he had to share. It has also led to him contributing to the Mastering vSphere 5.5 book, and into his new role so at VMware, which I think right now he's in the process of packing to head
Mm.
out to California to, well, he'll be neighbors to you.
That's pretty cool, and that was a pretty seamless plug for his book in there as well, Josh. Well done.
Well, that's I got to do what I got to do. I do want to make a comment. We've got some great activity on Twitter, and apparently I'm very news host sounding tonight. I feel like I'm pulling a Bob Costas and just showing up for the big event. to broadcast. And then you know, Jeremiah Dooley is absolutely correct. We are just using this survey to justify to our significant others the time that we invest in the podcast. That's all we're actually trying to accomplish. See, people can make money by being engaged with the community. I can see this backfiring quickly.
Nice.
All right. Well, without
So
further ado, I do see your screen, so I think you're good to go.
that's great. Thanks, Josh. And so today I am supposed to be talking about the futures of PowerCLI, and I thought why not what better place to start that than today, because today was actually the release of PowerCLI 5.5R2. So this is a vBrownBag exclusive. In that I haven't actually shown anyone this deck. In fact, I pretty much put most of it together today, but I haven't actually shown anyone the 5.5 Release 2 version of PowerCLI and all the goodness that comes with it. So most of the stuff you're going to see today will be stuff that will come out in future blog posts, or stuff that I'll be presenting probably at VMworld or vMugs around the place. So this is like, an exclusive just for the vBrownBag, because I love you guys so much. And this is obviously a presentation in a series of presentations, and there's been a number of presentations about PowerCLI already. Josh did a great job with the first one. He did the introduction to PowerCLI and took you through all of the beginner type stuff with PowerCLI. And then I did a couple that built upon Josh's great start and took you a little bit further. And today I'm going to take that even further. So I'm hoping this is going to build upon your existing knowledge of PowerCLI. And whilst there is some easy stuff in here, I will be going quite in depth when we get to the SRM cmdlets as well. And hopefully I'll explain those, but if there are any questions, please don't forget to raise them. And I will try and go back a couple of times if I need to and talk about the bits that aren't clear.
Sounds good. I'll be monitoring the GoToWebinar and Twitter, so if anything comes up, I will jump in and let you know.
Cool. Feel free to interrupt me at any point.
Knock, knock.
So for those of you who do not know me, very funny. My name is Alan Renouf. I am recently the product manager for VMware. I used to work in technical marketing. In fact, when I did the last vBrownBags, I was working in technical marketing. I'm now a product manager at VMware, and I work with the PowerCLI team to make sure that we give you the most awesome product ever, which isn't very hard because they're a pretty damn good team and it's a pretty damn good product. So, my job is just really a steering job and making sure we come out with the right stuff and crossing the T's, dotting the I's. If you want to check out more information on PowerCLI, you can go to the VMware blog. It's blogs.vmware.com/PowerCLI. Actually, we've renamed it from VI PowerShell, the link to PowerCLI. I should update my slides. My personal blog, where I also blog about things to do with PowerCLI, with PowerShell, with VMware, or with random thoughts on my mind, is virtual.net. So visit that if you get a chance. And as Josh already said, I'm on Twitter. You can bug me there. You can tell me about how you used PowerCLI. You can talk to me and send me tweets at Alan Renouf. So the agenda for today, what I wanted to do was go through what's new in PowerCLI 5.5R2. I wanted to go through the type of cmdlets that we've released. I wanted to go through some SRM cmdlets and demonstrations. I wanted to go through the tagging cmdlets and give you a demonstration on that. EVC mode, and I want to talk about a future fling, which we've hopefully got coming out, and get your comments on that. And then I'm going to talk about what's next with PowerCLI. So PowerCLI is a great tool. This has all been covered in Josh's introduction to PowerCLI, but the ability to manage lots of VMware products using PowerCLI makes it the ultimate automation tool, really. Not only be able to manage these, but be able to manage them fairly easily from the command line. So manage them en masse, do things like troubleshooting en masse, reporting en masse, and be able to basically tie the products together or glue the products together with a simple command line that almost reads like it's English. And up until now, we've had coverage for things like the vSphere core environment. We've had coverage for vSphere distributed switches, auto deploy, vCloud Director, licensing, image builder. And in the latest release, we've just introduced Site Recovery Manager. Whenever I was at vMugs, I would always ask people, what do you want us to cover next? What do we need to cover? And what do you want to see from PowerCli? One of the largest things I always saw was vSphere distributed switches. We covered those. The next thing that people asked me for was Site Recovery Manager. So in this release, you're going to see a lot of information about Site Recovery Manager, about what we've done there in the first release, and about how we're going to build on that in the future.
I'm certain that I can speak for a lot of people that there's a lot of excitement with Site Recovery Manager being added. It definitely seems like a natural fit for PowerCli.
Absolutely, and when you start thinking about it and how it ties in with the other products and what we can do with automation around Site Recovery Manager, it starts to get really exciting. I've got a couple of demos later on that will hopefully trigger a few ideas, and I've got some more blog posts coming up on what we can do there as well.
Excellent.
So just a quick what's new, and I'm going to cover some of these today. I'm not going to go through everything because we'll be here all day. I'm certainly not going to do demonstrations of everything. So, the quick what's new, we're now able to manage Site Recovery Manager. We can create and remove tags and tag categories. We can retrieve information and configure it EVC. We can do things like manage security policies for vSphere standard switches. We now have support for PowerShell version 4. For IP version 6, we can now specify the priority when you're doing a vMotion. We can do a whole bunch of other stuff which is included on this list, and I won't read every single one out here. It's included here. I'm going to send the deck so that you can download it as part of the vBrownBag series, and there's also a blog post which details this information on the vSphere blog at the moment. I wanted to give you a quick overview, first of all, of how we do things. This is supposed to be a futures presentation, but I think you can learn a lot of the future if you learn a lot about how we actually do things and what we do, and what this leads to in the future. So if we think about the type of commandlets that we produce in PowerCli, everybody is used to what we call the high-level commandlets, and I'll bring up the high-level commandlets on the screen. You can see the high-level commandlets are things like get-vm and get-vm resource configuration and set-vm resource configuration. But we also have these things called low-level commandlets, and the low-level commandlets are things like get-view and being able to use new object to create new VMware objects and populate the objects with the information, and then send those back to the API. Now, if we concentrate for a start on the low-level objects, you can see this isn't really something that a system administrator is used to. This is more like an API object, and it's more like as if you were sat there reading the API, reading the SDK information, typing this stuff out, and as if you were a programmer. What we try and do with PowerCli is hide all of that programmer type stuff and the developer type stuff, and give you a high-level representation of that. Because you don't want to create specifications, you don't want to fill those specifications out, you don't really care what those specifications are called. You just care that there's a virtual machine in this case, and that we want to set the resource configuration, and that we want to set a memory limit on our virtual machine of nothing. So I know which one I would rather type out, and if I'm trying to fix an issue with my infrastructure, and I'm trying to fix it with a number of virtual machines, you can see why we aggregate this stuff up into higher level commandlets, and why we make it easier for you to use and make it easier for you to read, and give you the ability to do this stuff en masse. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to mention the fact that there are low-level commandlets, and I'm also going to mention the fact that there are high-level commandlets. So whenever you think of low-level, think about how we first of all start off. So the first thing we'll do when we cover a product or when we cover a feature or an API is we'll create the low-level binding. We'll create the low-level commandlets. that will give you a slightly more complicated way to do things, but also it will give you the full API. So if you know how to do things this way, you'll always be sure that you can do what you need to with the full public API that we support. Remember, the high-level commandlets come afterward, which means that on day one, there isn't always going to be a high-level commandlet to do a certain feature. You'll be able to do it using the low-level commands, but with the high-level commands, you're kind of going to have to wait a little while. And the reason we do that is, first of all, we want to give you access to everything via the low level so that you are able to get the automation in there that you need, and so that you're able to create this stuff, and the smarter people in the community can actually formulate functions from these low-level commandlets and give you what look like commandlets, because they, you can call it a get VM resource configuration in this case, and just put all of this stuff into a function and create what looks like a function so that everybody else can use it. But what we also want to do is we want to see what people are doing with PowerCli. We want to see what people are doing with features. Take, for example, vSAN, which was released yesterday. If we released vSAN commandlets today in PowerCli, we would have a guess at what people want to automate. We would have a guess at what people want to do, how they want to do it, and we might not always be right. So if you were to go out and write a script with what we produced for you, if we made any changes, it wouldn't be backwards compatible. You wouldn't be able to use it in the future. And we want to make this stuff as easy and as useful as possible. So by waiting for the next release or the release after that, what we actually do is we see how people automate their systems. We see what people want to do en masse. We get feedback from people, and then we introduce the commandlets, the higher level commandlets, based upon that feedback and based upon the information that we have. So moving on, I'm going to talk about the SRM commandlets. We've introduced SRM related commandlets, Site Recovery Manager related commandlets in PowerCli 5.5 R2. We actually only have two commandlets. Those commandlets are connect-SRM server and disconnect-SRM server. So the first one obviously connects you to the SRM server, and the second one disconnects you. Well, how useful is that? I mean, you can connect to an SRM server, but you can't do anything with it, right? Well, wrong. Because when I talked about the low-level commandlets, this is where the SRM commandlets come in. Because what it actually does is when you connect to the SRM server, it creates us a default variable in your PowerShell session. So if you connect to an SRM server, you can see on my screen, all I've done is I've connected and I've typed $default SRM servers, and it's returned the connection information for that server. So it's returned my connection to the API. So what we can actually do is we can take that connection and we can start using that connection to automate SRM. And I'm going to talk you through this step by step, and I'm going to try and explain it to you so that you become familiar with how we form the low-level commandlets for SRM. And then hopefully you can take this and you can use it. I'll show you what I've done for a demonstration script here, and I'll show you how to read that script, and hopefully it will make sense to people, and you can use that to formulate your own functions or start automating SRM type tasks. And we can see what you're doing, and that will help us to produce the higher level commandlets as we go on. So the first thing I want to do, on this screen, you can see I've got my $default SRM servers again. I've got an array of SRM servers, so I'm going to call the first one out, which in this case is 0, and I'm going to look at the extension data, and that is the bit that really relates back to the SRM API. So if you were to read the Site Recovery Manager API developers guide, I've crossed out the word developers because no one should be a developer on this call. We're all using PowerCli. We should be system administrators. But if you take a look at that, you'll start recognizing some of the things that I'm putting on the screen. Some of the information that you read in there will relate back to the information that you see on the screen here, and relate back to the information that you see as part of this default variable. So A couple of things to help us out here and to just kind of set the scene. You've got a nice picture of a red car on the screen, a nice fast red car. I wish it was mine, but it's not. It's just a picture I lifted from the internet. I'm sure it's Josh's actually, Man, he probably gets paid at VCE. It's probably his car.
Yeah, definitely not my
So,
car.
well, so two of the things that I've highlighted here are methods and properties. Now, these are kind of developer-y type languages, but with PowerCli and PowerShell, these are things that it's useful to know what they actually mean. Now, if we start talking about methods, a method is something that I can do with that car. So the car in this case is my PowerShell object. And if I want to do something with it, it's called a method. So if I want to turn right, then I would do a car dot turn right, open brackets, close brackets, and it would make the car turn right. Another type of entry for this object would be a property. All objects have got methods and properties. So a method is, like I said, turn right, but a property of this car is that it's red. A property also might be that it has wheels. A property might be that it's a Nissan or that it's a Ferrari. Those are the kind of things that generally the information or the kind of things that you want to look out for reporting style commands and scripts. And the methods are the things that do stuff with that object. So keep that in mind as we go through this part, and it will make things easier for you. So if we read the SRM Developer Site Recovery Manager API guide, you'll see that it's laid out in a couple of different ways. It talks about the authentication methods. So if we go default SRM servers dot extension data dot login local, it will return the information about the login local. It will return the information about the login sites, and it will return the information about the logout local. We also have an entry called service instance, which will retrieve the information about this connection to SRM. And the interesting stuff starts coming in the next section. So you can see we actually have a property here. If I do $default SRM servers and then 0.extension data, and then I do a dot protection, you can see it will return my information about the protection groups. And all it will actually retrieve is a property called moref, which is the individual object reference that relates back to the SRM API. So it's kind of like a serial number or a way that we can identify this particular protection. And you can see it's also got a number of different methods. So the methods here are things like list protection groups, list inventory mappings, list replicated data stores. And as we go through, and if we list that information and then we put another dot on the end, we'll start getting more and more information. Don't worry too much if this is sounding all very developerish and not system admin at all. This is the advanced session. As I said, we're building on what we've done so far, and it will become more clear as we actually start taking a look at some of the examples and some of the scripts. And even if it's not clear, this is the kind of thing you can go back to and actually get your head around by watching a couple of times. The more you read this and the more you look at the API guide, the more it becomes clear. So within this object, the default SRM servers.extension data, we also have recovery. And what this will do is this will list the recovery plans, and it will get the history of the recovery plans, and it will start allowing us to work with recovery plans as well. And this is generally the way that the SRM low-level commandlets that we have at the moment work. So you can see on the screen, this is a very good guide to get started. These are the main methods, these are the main properties that you'll be interested in. So let's take a look at how we might start using those. So I've put an example on the screen. I actually took this example from our documentation. We've got 3 or 4 examples in there already that tell you how you can use these examples and it explains them a little bit further, but I'm going to take you through this one here, and hopefully it will start making a bit more sense now we've been through the previous slide. So the first thing we're going to do is connect to our SRM server. That'll establish our default SRM servers variable, and it will populate it with the information about our SRM servers. You can see on line 2, what we're doing is we're actually saying, okay, create me a variable called SRM API, and actually store the information from default SRM servers.extension data. So it's just a shortcut, really. I'm just going to use that later on, and I don't want to type out default SRM servers 0.extension data every single time. And now you can see we're going to get a list of our protection groups, and to do that, all we will do is we'll create a variable called protection groups, and we'll say that that is equal to the SRM API .protection.list protection groups, open bracket, close brackets. That will go away to the API, and that will get us a list of our protection groups. So hopefully the slide before makes a little bit more sense now. You can see how this information relates to what we've got. You can see list protection groups is on there, and it's a method, so it's going to go and list the protection groups. So now we've got the protection groups, what we're going to do is for each of those, we are going to store the current protection group. The $_ is the current object in the pipeline. So we're going to store that into the variable called protection group. And we're going to get the information. So by default, when it retrieves the protection group, it will actually only retrieve the instance of the object. What we actually need to do is say, okay, I'm not interested in the actual protection group. I'm interested in the information for that protection group. So what we can do is say, okay, go and get the info. And I'll take you through this yet again in a minute, and we'll do it in more of a PowerCli way and more of a programmatic way. And hopefully things will start to get in your mind. You know, the more we do this, the more it will become clear. And as we start using it from PowerCli, you'll see how easy it is to use PowerCli to kind of explore the objects and see what's around and see how we can use those. So once we've got the information for that protection group, what we need then is we need the protected virtual machines. So in this case, we're doing protected VMs equals protection group dot list protected virtual machines. So that's going to call the method that lists the protected virtual machines, and it's going to store those virtual machines inside of our variable. And then on the next line, for each of those, we're just going to actually ask it to go and update the view data so that we've got the latest information and all of the virtual machine information that we need. The line after that, we're then going to create, so for each of these objects that each of these protected virtual machines we've returned back, we are going to create an object. So the $output equals quotes, pipeline, select VM name, port group name. All that does is that creates an empty shell of an object. It says I want output to be an object, and I want it to be an empty shell, and I want it to have two properties, one called VM name and one called port group name. The line after that, we're going to actually populate our empty object with information. So we're going to say, for the first object in my pipeline, go to the output variable and store my VM's name in there, and then store my port group in there. Sorry, not port group, PG, port group, yeah, maybe not, protection group information in there. So you can see we're building up our object as we go along here, and for each of the virtual machines, what we're doing is we're restoring inside our output object, we're storing the virtual machine name and then the protection group information. So we'll end up with a list of virtual machines and the port group information that they're in. And then we're going to just call that object that we've created with $output, and it's going to output that to the screen. So as we close our for each statements, you can see the last line is going to take what we've produced, and then it's going to just put it into a nice view for us so that we can see that information. It's going to put it into a format table view, and it's going to list the name, and it's going to pull the output.vm name from there, and it's going to list the protection group name so that when we view it on the screen, it gives us a nice output. So let's break out and do our first live demo and hope that everything goes okay and that my connection is still live. I jinxed it, didn't I?
Well, that's the way it's supposed to go on a live demo.
Oh. And we have a black screen. Any questions while I'm sorting this out, Josh?
There was one question. Well, and when I sent them an answer, it disappeared. Oh yeah, show answered questions. It was for SRM. Are there unique commands for array-based versus vSphere-based replication?
There's not, no. Like I said, there's only two commands, and what you can do is you can pull the information that's in our public API.
Right.
So you can use these commandlets with vSphere replication and with SRM based
Okay.
upon the information that's in our public API. Yay. Okay. Nobody noticed. So you can see I've got the exact same script that we had on the slide, and I'm just going to run this script and we should see the results. So you'll see it first of all connect to our virtual infrastructure server, and then it will connect to our SRM server. And then once it's done that, it will go off and it will call the API, it will grab the information that we need, the script that we just walked through. And you can see in my case, it's returned two virtual machines. It's returned base Win701A, which is part of my low priority VMs, and it's returned base/01A, which is part of my high priority VMs protection group. And we can go to vSphere and we can actually confirm that information easy enough by going to our protection groups. And in our high priorities, you can see we have one virtual machine base /, and in our low, we have another. Interestingly enough, you can't export this information. There's no export here, right? So, you know, we've written a script here already that we can use to export our information. And often this is useful for people like auditors who need to know, you know, which virtual machines are you actually protecting? Which virtual machines are going to fail over if there's an earthquake or if there's a problem? If we need to fail these virtual machines over, which ones are protected at the moment? So hopefully the walkthrough of that has shown you how we get that information, but let's go through it step by step, and I can show you how we actually wrote this script and how we grabbed that information and how I wrote these slides earlier to give you that information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a PowerShell window. Is the resolution okay for this, Josh?
Yeah, I think it's okay. You know, there is the zoom button, but if anybody wants to let me know if they're having trouble with resolution, then there's not a whole lot we can.
Let's make it a little. I'll try and make it a little bit bigger. Let's see. Well, there we go.
Yeah, that's much better though. Yeah, I was
Okay,
gonna say.
so let's just connect to our virtual infrastructure server. And we'll connect to our SRM server. And you can see we're connected to our SRM server. And if I do a get variable, and then we scroll up, you can see we have the default SRM servers, which we spoke about a moment ago. So let's take a look at that and again go through how we would use that $default SRM servers. You can see it retrieves the same information as when we joined, and it's got all of the information about the API and about the connection here. So you'll instantly see the version of vCenter and SRM that we've got here, the build, the product line, all that kind of information. But the interesting stuff is inside the extension data, as we said before. So if I go to my first list, because obviously I can connect to multiple SRM servers here. And then we do a extension data. That's our direct link into the API. So if I look at that, you can see it starts bringing back the information and the information from the slide deck, which we spoke about a moment ago, i.e. the recovery and the protection and the MoRef. But if we take that and we do a get member should be a command that most people are familiar with. If you know PowerShell, you'll know that this is the way that you can start investigating your objects and start investigating what's inside them. You know, what are the properties? What are the methods? What's my object called? What type of object is it? What information is actually inside this object? If I do that, you can see that we have a bunch of methods on here, like I said earlier. And remember, login locale, logout locale, SRM login sites. These are all ones that were listed on the slide deck that I showed you earlier. And then we have the different properties. So we have the protection and we have the recovery. So now we know we've got the protection. Let's go protection. And we can see that it returns a single property called MoRef. But again, let's use getMember, or GM for short, and we can list the methods and the properties. So we can see we do have that MoRef property, but also we have a bunch of methods that allow us to do interesting stuff, like list inventory mappings, list protection groups. So let's take that one step further. If I run it without the brackets, if I just run a list protection groups, what it will do is it will return the information that it needs to run. So methods sometimes need you to give it an object, or sometimes they'll just give you information back without you actually giving it an object. In this case, I can see that I don't need to give it an object for it to return the information for me. So what we can do is we can do an open and a close bracket just to call the method with no properties, or not by sending it any data at all. And you can see it's listed 2 of our protection groups already. So if we wanted to take a look at those, we could actually single out our first protection group, and then again we could do a get member. And once we do that, we can see that again has got a bunch of different properties associated with it, like list associated virtual machines. So and that's returned a virtual machine object for us. So you can see that instantly we've gone through the SRM connection. We've found our way through investigating the objects and kind of going through bit by bit and just calling each one, finding the information. We can see we've gone right the way down from our protection group into it and seen the virtual machines that are covered. And if we take a look back at our script, this is exactly what it's doing. We did exactly the same thing. We looked at the default SRM servers, we looked at the .protection, we looked at the protection groups, and then for each of those, we went inside and we listed the protected virtual machines, and then we took that data and we formed our own object, we made it look pretty, and then we just outputted that to the screen. So this is exactly how we came up with this demo, and this is exactly what I would do if I was messing around, if I was investigating the objects, investigating the APIs, and trying to find out the information and find the information that I need. Now, obviously, I could just take this and put it into a nice function, and we could just enable people to run it like that. So what we could do is we could do a function, and we could call it something like get protected VMs. And then we'll open the function. I will tab indent all of this, and then I will close the function at the end. And now when I run this, you'll see that it does nothing. It doesn't return any output to the machine. But now, if I'm in a PowerShell console, and if I've run this function already, what I can do is I can do a get dash protected VMs, and it's in my list already, so it looks like it's a command there. And then we can use get protected VMs, and it'll actually go and list our protected virtual machines. So this is what I talk about when other people can actually take this information, they can write a bunch of functions, and then they can give you the functions so that it looks like you're using commandlets. You might be the type of person that says, you know what, I don't want to put all this hard work into it. I know that there's some smarter people than me. I'm just going to take what the community has produced and actually use that. The best script you can ever write is one that you've stolen from somebody else's site.
Amen.
And adjusted to meet your needs. So use this information. What you'll see from us, from the VMware team, is that what we're going to do is create a bunch of these examples and actually put them on GitHub for you to use. So give you a medium for you to not only use them, but also add your own entries in there, improve on the basic stuff that we've done, and make it easier for other people out there that don't want to create these functions.
So, Alan, a couple of things come to mind with that. First and foremost, I did want to point out that one of the viewers noticed that your function ends with a plural, and they suggest that you should use get protected VM.
Nice. Absolutely correct. There we go.
There we go.
Bonus points for that person.
That's right. I agree. And the second thing is that, given the way the SRM capabilities are in PowerCli, it definitely drives to people building functions. Are there going to be functions released that you know of already, such as the one that you have here, that people are going to be able to get a hold of pretty quickly?
Yeah, I've got 3 or 4 of them that I'm going to put on GitHub, like I said, and hopefully people can build upon the ones that are there and add their own in there, and they can also use the ones that are there and adjust them to make them better as well.
Okay, I was going for specifics. Is there specifics ones that specific?
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
you'll see some of the obvious ones from me, like get protection group, get resource.
Okay.
You can work it out by just going through the GUI, really. Get protection groups, something like get. I'm not sure how I worked it out yet, but some way of getting the protected virtual machines and being able to pipe those through the protection groups. Also the recovery plans as well, being able to retrieve that kind of information. Also stuff like starting and stopping failovers. You can do that with PowerCli, and in fact it is actually a single line of code. Somebody asked me internally the other day, okay, how can I automate the failover of my virtual machines? And to me that sounds pretty damn scary, because you've got to be pretty sure that you want to automate that you want to fail over your virtual machines to another site, and the only sure way is to kind of stick a human in the way. But if they've got if they trust their script that maybe pings the default gateway or something, I don't know, and they want to do that, then yes, you can do that through the public APIs. Another great use case I've heard for this as well is being able to perform automated tests of your recovery plans. So actually, rather than doing the failover once a month, kicking off a test, making sure that it successfully works, and then reporting back on that data and just sending everybody an email saying, you know what, our recovery plan still works. If the worst did happen, we'd still be covered and we'd be good.
Right. So the other question that came to mind that I don't believe you had touched on was what versions of SRM are we able to manage and to access with these commandlets?
That's a good question. I believe it is. This works with SRM 5.1 to 5.5. I'm not an SRM version expert, but so long as the public API is there, the commandlets should work. Still there?
Yep, I'm still here. Yeah. So the another another follow up on that to that then would be, with some of these functions that are going to be developed, I have to assume that we would expect actual published commandlets in the future.
Yeah, so if you go, if you go back to what I mentioned at the start and the way that we produce those commandlets, you can see that we do the low-level commandlets first. And here's the definite example of us doing a
Right.
low-level commandlet first, giving you the access to the API so that you can mess around with it and automate anything you want. Slightly harder, but still achievable.
Right.
Um,
It's like the
Now what we're
pre-extension data
gonna
days.
Yeah, yeah. So what we're going to do after that is obviously see how people start to use this so that we can formulate our own commands, and so that in the future we have a better idea. And if we do go ahead and create the higher level commandlets, we can actually have a good idea of what people want to do, how they want to use it. And part of that input will obviously be looking at blogs, looking at how people use the commandlets, looking at the forums, seeing how they use the commandlets that are out there, and just kind of see what information they need and how we can make those commandlets the best for you to use. Because we don't want to come out with a commandlet that's unuseful, sorry. We want to bring one out that is very useful to you, that just covers everything that you want to do.
Right. So essentially, listeners, that is a call to the community.
Yeah, use the commandlets, come up with some cool stuff. I need to get a move on. I didn't realize I was going to spend this much time on SRM.
That's okay. No, nobody's sent me any
So,
complaints, so you're good.
okay, good. I think we've pretty much covered SRM for now, and hopefully you've got enough to get started there. Some of the other cool areas as well. I know in the previous release we brought out some tagging commandlets, and the tagging commandlets we brought out actually allowed you to assign tags to virtual machines. So the main use case that we saw when people said they wanted to automate tags wasn't actually creating the tags, because that's fairly simple, and it's normally the kind of thing that you would only do once. You would go in, you would create a tag, but the assigning of tags could be quite cumbersome. It is the kind of thing that you would want to automate. That's purely why we started with the assignment tags in the previous release. What we've done now is we've gone back and we've filled the gap. So we've actually created the commandlets that allow you to create tags and remove tags. So you can create a new tag category and you can list the tag categories, you can create new tags, you can list the tags, and you can remove both of those as well. So you can see on the screen a couple of examples there. What we're doing is, in the first example, we're doing a get tag category with the name of my tag category. So we're just retrieving that tag category, and then we're creating a new tag inside of that category called my tag, and then we're giving it a description. In the second example, we are getting the tag category, and then what we're doing is we are getting the tag, and then we are removing that tag. We have 11 commandlets in total for working with these tags, with tags now. And obviously, you need vSphere 5.1 onwards to use tags. And these are only available via the web client. And I started thinking to myself, because, tag commandlets are great, but what can I do with them? And there is actually a bunch of stuff, and I believe this is going to open up a whole different ball game when it comes to automation, because we can start basing information, we can start storing information in the web client first of all, but we can also retrieve that information from the web client and we can do things with it. So what I've done is I've built upon the script that we just went through a moment ago. You can see that we've got the script that retrieves our information. It retrieves our names and our port and our protection group information as it did before. And then all I'm doing is I'm storing that inside a new object called list. Okay. And then what I'm doing is I'm going to say, okay, if we don't have a tag category called protection group, then error out silently, because I don't want you to complain about it, but go ahead and create a new tag category called protection groups. So I'm going to create myself a tag category and I'm going to call it protection groups with this set of commandlets here. And then for my list of virtual machines and their protection groups, I'm going to select the protection group name that we retrieved from the SRM API, and I'm going to select the unique names so that we've got a list of the protection groups or the categories that we need, or the tags that we need to create. And then I'm going to say, if the tag doesn't exist for this protection group, then again, error out silently, don't complain about it, just go ahead and create it. So what we're going to end up with is a list of tags with our protection group name in them. And then we're going to go back through that list yet again, and we're going to say, okay, for each of the virtual machines in that list, go and assign that tag that we've just created to that virtual machine. Remember, everything with SRM at the moment is still inside the C# client. You cannot retrieve the information in the web client for the virtual machines, which means you've got to go to and from the different clients to get that information. This kind of gives us the information straight away inside of the web client. You can see if I go back to my web client and I log in, if I go to my tags at the moment, I've got no items in my tag list. I've got no items in my category. I'm not pulling any tricks here. So if we go through and we run our script, it's going to do exactly as we just explained. So I'm going to click run. It's going to go and connect to our SRM server. It's going to pull back the information. It's going to pull back the list of protected virtual machines and the protection group that they're in. And then it's going to go ahead and it's going to create our tag category for us. The first line that should come up, you can see it should create our tag category. There we go, created a tag category called protection group, created the tag for low priority VMs, created a tag for high priority VMs, and then it's assigned our virtual machines to the correct protection group they're in. So instantly we've taken information from SRM and we've populated the web client with this information. We populated the tags with this information. So if I go back to the web client and just get it to do a refresh, you can see we now have a category called protection group. And if we look inside that category, we have a tag called high priority VMs and low priority VMs. And if we go to our virtual machines, we can select one of our virtual machines. And if I was a vSphere admin, I would just be able to select the virtual machine and instantly see if that virtual machine is protected or not by looking at the tags. When it works, I'm running in a virtual environment, so this is a little slow. You can see the tags have returned, and you can see the protection group for this virtual machine. It's a high priority virtual machine, therefore it's protected. The other cool thing that you can do with this as well is we can use the search feature and we can search for the tag information. So if I start typing high, you can see we can list the high priority virtual machines. I can instantly click on that tag and get a list back of all the virtual machines that are tagged with high priority VMs. We can even perform actions on those. If I had multiple virtual machines, I could right click on those, I could create a snapshot, I could do whatever I needed to. I could perform actions based upon those tags.
And
So
I would say you should be able to export that list now as well.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And that would be easy enough as well, because now we've got that information in there. We know that we can retrieve that information. So we can do a get tag. Now you've challenged me on the fly.
Well, I just remember you mentioning earlier how it was challenging to be able to gather that, and one of the use cases for the scripts. My immediate thought on this is it provides a level of visibility to a non-SRM admin to be able to see whether a system is in a protected group, or to provide visibility to application owners.
Right. So we can easily get the tag, and then hopefully we can just pipe that to. No, we can't. That's what I would expect to do anyway. I remember them being a little finicky.
I really wasn't trying to set you up, Alan.
No, that's cool. You can see how I would do stuff. But yes, you can. In fact, I think even the virtual machines have got a tag property.
I think the nice part about this is we get an opportunity to see you work through trying to find information, just like we do. It, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you saw when I did the SRM how easy it was to actually navigate through the object and almost take a look at what's inside the API without actually reading any documentation. This is why I like PowerShell, the ability to look at the API through objects and just through retrieving information and doing get member and then form your scripts upon that. I think is a very powerful tool. So yeah, you could return that information if I had the script right. I won't because of time, obviously, not because I can't do it. But yeah, you could return that information and easily pipe it through to an export CSV and export that information straight out as well. So and don't let tags stop there. I mean, one of the scripts that I've got that I've been using as well is the ability to actually do it the other way. So what I can do is I can take a look at my tags, and if my VM is tagged as a high priority VM, I can automatically make sure that that is associated to a certain recovery plan. So I can actually go to go to the SRM API and say, okay, for each of my virtual machines that are tagged with this particular tag, go and protect them. Make sure that they are protected. Going the other way is really powerful as well. It gives the ability for people to tag virtual machines and for them instantly and automatically to be recoverable. I expect to see a lot more tag-based scripts out there now that we have these tagging commandments.
I'm certain Luke
So we've
Deakins
done
will
the
have like
demonstration
20
on
of them in
tagging.
place in no time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure if he uses SRM actually, but we'll see. I'm sure he will now. So any questions on the tag commandments that we've been through or the scripts that we've been through so far, Josh?
Yep, we had one question from Eric. He says, will this overwrite any VCOps tags and or will VCOps see the new tags?
Good question. No, it definitely won't overwrite any tags that VCOps comes up with. I don't know too much about VCOps, full disclaimer. I'm assuming they use the same tag method that everybody else does, and it's just them populating data like we are. So, presumably you'll be able to read that information in the same way and, populate more information on the virtual machine for those tags, or, data stores or any other. It's not just virtual machines that can have tags. It can be a number of different inventory objects.
That looks like that was the only
So I'll
remaining.
keep going.
Yep, no, that was the only remaining question. Someone
Okay,
else,
great.
you have some fans. They wanted to point out that your VMware tools are out of date on that system.
That
It's a
system is
tough
just a
crowd.
virtual. Yeah, I know. It's a virtual environment I span up that had SRM just so that I could mess around with it. I didn't build it myself. If I did, it would obviously have the tools up to date.
Good response.
But thanks for letting me know that. If this was a production environment, I'd be worried. If I'm not going to blow it away at the end of the day, I'd be worried.
Yeah, exactly.
So EVC mode is something that people have been asking for a long time now. I'm going to hurry up through this slide. I realize I'm already out of time. I hope you don't mind me going over for a couple of minutes. I want to show you something really cool. And I figure if people want to drop off, they can. I won't take it personally.
Yeah, that's the beauty of
So
recording, so you can keep on trucking.
exactly, exactly. If you do drop off, make sure you come back because there is something that I'm just about to show that is absolutely awesome. If you weren't at VMworld, then you'll love it, and I want to get your feedback on it. So EVC Mode is something that has been a private API from the VMware point of view for a long time now, but it's been one of those things that you've wanted to automate when you do a automated build out of your environment. If we can already create our data centers, we can already create our clusters, we can already add all the hosts in there. We can pretty much do everything we want to do apart from enable EVC mode. Well, now you can. We've actually enabled you to do that and create, enable EVC mode and retrieve the information based upon EVC mode and add the hosts into there as well. So you can now pretty much build out the entire environment using PowerCli. You'll see
Now,
some more blog posts on this and more examples on EVC mode coming to the PowerCli blog soon.
so I assume that the same limitations with EVC mode and being able to enable it on existing clusters and things would still persist.
Absolutely, we're not doing anything clever here. All we're doing is calling the information that's there already. So anything that you would do via the web client, you're just able to automate now. We're not somehow making EVC mode a lot better.
Come on, make it magic so that I can modify EVC mode and configure it in
Okay,
an existing cluster. Bring us the magic.
next release, Josh.
Well, I'm really glad to see this because in my previous job, we actually did have a moment where we needed to enable EVC mode in some clusters who became kind of split on their technology due to kind of a collapse in the data center, making room for new stuff, and we needed to enable EVC mode. So we wrote some scripts to evacuate systems and bring them back on. Found a clever way around the power shutdown portion of it, but enabling EVC mode was still a manual thing. So having had this, I would have had the whole thing automated. So thanks for
Yeah,
providing it. Unfortunately, it was a year and a half late for me.
no problem. I've
I
got one
appreciate it.
semi-happy customer.
Yeah, I might see if I can. I'll see if I can dig up that script, and I'll be happy to share it out with the community if anybody wants to wrap it up and make it a full function or something.
Yeah. So, we've quickly been through, well, not quickly, actually, I took my time about it. We've been through three of the major features that were in that release, but don't forget there's a ton more in there as well that you can work with. And if I can do that in an hour, then my VMworld session is probably going to be like 6 hours, believe me. So moving on, one of the as this is a futures session, I thought I would actually include some futures stuff. You can kind of guess what we do and where we're going next based upon the information I've given you so far. But one of the cool things that we came out with that I did show at VMworld, and hopefully not everybody on this call was at VMworld. It was this demonstration here. So I'm going to run the demonstration and talk you through it. I'm actually going to rewind it back to the start first, and then I'm going to run it.
Does it have a groovy soundtrack?
It doesn't, no. You can sing if you want, Josh.
No, I'll
But
pass.
the first thing to realize whilst I'm running this demonstration is that I'm on a Mac. So yes, I'm launching the web client, I'm using a Mac, and we know that PowerCli doesn't exist for the Mac at the moment. But in the web client, what we've got here is an extra tab for a PowerCli console. And we can do things like open existing scripts, we can find out information how to use this console, we can clear the output, or we can send information through the console. So what we're going to do here is, you can see we have tab completion as well of our cmdlets, kind of stuff that we're used to. We can run a get VM, and we're instantly able to run a get VM on a Mac in the web client without PowerCli being installed on the client machine here. PowerCli is actually installed somewhere else, and what we're doing is calling that session. you can see the responses that come back even look like they're part of the web client. That response there popped up a box and asked us for some information. As we go through this, one of the great things we can do is actually grab information. So in this case, I'm going to find a script that somebody's written, Julian Wood in this case, and he's written a nice script that gives us a one-liner and shows us the snapshots that are over 30 days old, a common kind of script you might write. So I can paste that straight in there and it will give us the information. It will return back the snapshots that are over 30 days old. We're going to come back to that and see how we might use that otherwise. So as well as the window, what we can actually do is we can go to an object. So in this case, I'm going to go to my data store, my data center object called the Shire. I'm going to right click and have a PowerCli menu. You can see here I can create a new report and it'll instantly take me to another area where I've stored some scripts already. I've stored my own scripts, and also I can have a list of predefined scripts, so scripts that come with the plugin and have been added on to scripts that everybody can use that hooks into the web client. You can see it's created my script for me. We can save the script, we can delete it, we can even validate it to make sure that the PowerCli code is correct. And what we do is when we create this, we create some metadata that we need. So you can see as I clicked on the data center, it's automatically said, okay, we're going to create this for a data center object, and we're going to store that data center inside of vBrownBag. I'm just going to paste the code that we borrowed from Julian's site a moment ago, and I'm going to adjust it slightly so it returns the VM object rather than just the name. And we're going to say, okay, we know we're doing it for just the data store, the data center. So list me the virtual machines that are part of that vBrownBag. Remember, vBrownBag is the data center. So now I'm going to save this script that we've written or that we've stolen from Julian, and I'm going to save it as snapshots over 30 days old. And remember, what we did to do this was just right click on the data center and tell it to create a new report. So now we have a new report and it's going to list the snapshots that are over 30 days old. So that was great, we created our scripts. The cool thing that we can do now is we can actually go back and we can right click on our data center again. And we can say, okay, well, go and actually run the report. And it will give you a list of the reports that we've created, and we can execute that. So it instantly returns the information back into the web client, and it gives us the objects and the information that we needed. We can even right click on those objects and do tasks with them. So I could right click on all of these objects and actually remove the snapshots if I needed to. Another thing we can do is we can right click on it and we can use PowerCli yet again. So I can run another action, and this time I can actually say, okay, go ahead and remove the snapshot. So that will run another PowerShell script based upon the results here, and it will remove the snapshots that are over 30 days old.
That is just phenomenal. Just flat out
Pretty
awesome.
cool stuff. It's pretty cool stuff. What we're essentially doing here is we're giving you the ability to extend the web client and bring the power of PowerCli back into the administrative UI. So anyone that wants to create scripts, perhaps you have an expert in your environment that creates all the scripts and everybody else runs them. You can create them and you can store them, and you can give that ability to everybody to run the scripts that you've created and make their lives easier. Another example here as well, remember this is PowerShell, it's not just limited to PowerCli. So what we can actually do is if I've right clicked on one of my virtual machines and I'm going to PowerCli here and I'm telling it to run a different report, and you can see I have a report called list CMDB information. So what it's actually going to do is it's going to go off to my CMD or my SQL database that backs my CMDB. It's going to find the information for my virtual machine called Frodo, and it's going to return that information to the screen. So I can instantly bring back the information about this virtual machine from our CMDB. I can see who the owner is, I can see the department, and I can see their extension number. I can perhaps give them a call and ask them why they have a snapshot that's over 30 days old. So remember, we have the PowerCli console and we have PowerCli scripts. And this was just been a really quick demonstration of a fling that we're hoping to bring out in the future. I don't have a date on that yet, but I'd love to hear your comments on this, and I'd love to hear if this is the kind of thing that would be useful to you.
Well, looking at
Any
a few of
questions
the
about how that works?
looking at a few of the comments, there's definitely a lot of interest. I know personally, I'm very excited about it. I know we talked a little bit about it at VMworld, and that one of the
Mm.
challenges that I faced and I hear about frequently is once I create a script, getting other people to use it and making it the work involved to make it user friendly for others who may not be as um, fluent with PowerShell or comfortable running PowerShell scripts. So I personally think it's fantastic. There's already been a couple of people that have said, when does it get rolled into the product proper? So,
Mm.
hopefully whatever we can do to help make that happen, there's definitely going to be some backing.
Yeah, well, the call to action on that is to actually download the Fling, mess around with it, make sure it works. Obviously use it in your test environment because it is a Fling, it's not supported. Make sure it works, give us feedback, tell us if there's things that you don't like, tell us if there's things that we can do to make it even better than it is already. If the more information we get, the better this will be when and if it's released as a product.
So if you could just for a moment, because I have downloaded it and messed with it a little bit, and if you could just talk really quick about some of the requirements for running it and what people need to, I guess, think about when they're considering running it.
Yeah, so what we're doing at the moment is the reason it hasn't been released since VMworld, since I spoke about it, is that we wanted to make it a few architectural changes. Obviously, people are going to want to use this with the VCSA. And if you think about how this works, what it does is it opens a PowerShell session. Now, it needs to open that PowerShell session somewhere. And originally, the way it worked was it would open the PowerShell session on your virtual center machine. This isn't always ideal for a number of reasons. First of all, we don't want you running some kind of PowerShell job that might cripple your virtual center, that might add, so much load because you're actually running the PowerShell session on your virtual center. We don't want it taking the resources that are supposed to be there for serving the virtual center itself. The second one is that we wanted it to be able to work with the VCSA as well. So we wanted anyone with a Linux-based virtual center to also have this ability. So what we did is we went back to the drawing board and we changed it slightly. So we now enable you to run the setup on any Windows machine that has PowerShell installed, and then it will automatically register itself with the web client, and then it will tell itself that it exists. It'll install the stuff it needs in web client, and it will use that machine from there on to run the PowerShell scripts. This means that people can have a dedicated machine for running PowerShell scripts. They can make sure that their snap-ins, their plugins, their scripts, everything they need are on this machine to use it.
All right, so
And
go ahead.
cool.
So we did have a couple of things that came up, questions. Is it using 32-bit Power CLI or 64-bit? That was the first question.
64-bit.
64-bit, and if people were noticed in the list, the VM guest commandlets now run 64-bit. I was very excited to see that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and then another thing that came up, and you've kind of you mentioned it, so I think there was a little bit of confusion. This was a fling that you talked about and essentially announced initially at VMworld, and that I do recall, I believe, seeing it on the fling site, but it's not on there
No,
presently. So you did pull it back as you
no,
were talking about.
it's never been on there. It's never
It,
been on there. You were dreaming.
I downloaded it
You
somewhere.
were. No, you didn't. Not this one. You probably downloaded
Oh,
Web Commander, which
Web
people confuse
Commander.
this with. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So Web Commander is more of a browser-based way of running PowerShell scripts. It kind of gives you a single icon, almost like an app store way of running PowerShell scripts. So yeah, it's the similarities are there. So I'll forgive you for mistaking it with Web Commander, but this is totally different. This is meant for the vSphere admins and for adding the ability back to the vSphere admins to give PowerCLI and extend the web client.
Power to the vSphere admins. I like it. So
Absolutely.
I know you say it's future. Hopefully, we'll be seeing it soon. Then
I hope so too.
you are good at your job, aren't you?
You know what it's like. I'm not able to give dates even on flings because people start quoting me on them, and then it becomes revenue impacting. And and I promised you that it would be out on a certain date, so I'm not legally allowed to actually mention dates.
Right. No, that's fine. Now, one of the pieces of functionality that's kind of existed recently is with this similar functionality of vCenter Orchestrator, being able to tie VCO workflows in with that
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
so obviously this isn't going to replace that. It's really more of an additional option for people to do where they may able to utilize existing scripts in their environment and integrate them into the
Yeah,
client.
absolutely. And VCO does an absolutely great job of extending the web UI already. That functionality is already there. So if you're a VCO expert and you have the workflows that you need, then definitely you can do this stuff already. What this does is this gives the PowerCLI admins or the people that have scripts that achieve a certain task the ability to take those scripts and plug them back into the UI, or even write new quick, one-liners or quick things to actually go ahead and do that. VCO is great for integration and making all of our products work together and kind of the behind the scenes automation and integration that's needed. You kind of create a workflow and then you forget about it because it does its job right. It goes ahead and does things. The way I see people using PowerCLI that's different to VCO sometimes is the ability to do this kind of stuff real fast. So, mass production in a single line of code, mass configuration changes, reporting, all that kind of stuff is so easy in PowerCLI that it just makes sense to create it there and get the results you need and then not have to go through creating a workflow for every time you need this stuff.
Yes, that's good stuff. So one other questions, and I'll restructure the question a little bit. So you mentioned that once released, the Fling would be able to be installed on a Windows machine that has Power CLI, and then
Mm-hmm.
it would connect to the vSphere web client, and then you'd be able to run those scripts on that server. Now, hardware limitations aside, I'm assuming that this is being designed so where multiple sessions can be run or scripts can be run simultaneously.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, I believe it is. I'm pretty sure that it's going to run multiple scripts, absolutely. But as for the other side of things, we're going to have to mess around with it and see if it meets your requirements. If it doesn't, then let us know.
Okay, and personal thought for me, even with VCO, when you use the PowerShell uh, add-on or plug-in for VCO, you kind of do something similar, right? You target a Windows machine that has PowerShell installed on it, and then execute the commands against that. I assume that
Yeah,
that could be the same machine. I can't think of a logical reason why it couldn't be.
it would absolutely be the same machine. Yeah, could be.
Cool. All
So
right.
maybe you already have a Windows server set up in your environment that does nothing but run scheduled tasks of scripts to do things. This would be the ideal kind of machine where you would install that.
Very cool.
So I've kind of, I've mentioned about our process, about how we create this kind of stuff, about what we do. But really, the last slide I've got here is, what's next is really, I'd love to hear from you what we're missing. we base a lot of our development on what the customers want. What you want, what do you want to do, what isn't easy, what would you love to see, what would you love to see PowerCli for, how would you want to use it. All that kind of information is great from my point of view. We can retrieve that, we can prioritize it. I'm not saying you're going to get it, I'm not even, and if you do get it, it's probably not going to be in the next release, but I'm just saying that kind of information is fantastic from my point of view. Reach out to your TAMs, reach out to anybody at VMware that you know, and send them an email and say, hey, you know what? Send this off to Alan. Even send me an email. This is the kind of stuff I would love to see. This is the kind of stuff in my job that is a pain at the moment that I would love to automate out of the way. Is there any chance we can do this at the moment, or we can do this in the script? I'm not going to sit there and write the script for you. Unfortunately, that's not my job anymore. But I can at least tell you if it's possible, or if it's not possible, it gives me great ideas for what we can do in future releases.
So what I gathered there is that the best way to solicit that information to you is email or Twitter, or do you guys have a forum that you'd prefer people to reach out on?
So at the moment, email to me would be fantastic. My email address, I'll give you my VMware email address here. It's renoufa@vmware.com. That's renoufa@vmware.com. Send me an email.
All right, you heard that, folks. Send them emails with your ideas. Now, I know we're hitting at the end here, and you got your summary of excellent resources. I gotta throw this one at you because one person in the questions asked, when will we see modules instead of PS snap-in?
That's a good question, and the question I'd like to ask back is, why do you want to see modules? What is it about modules that makes you think I need modules instead of a snap-in? Because it's definitely something that we're looking at and that we have on the roadmap. But we are not Microsoft. When Microsoft create modules, they know what's going to be on the operating system. They know what they can install into the operating system and what they're managing. When third parties create PowerShell or PowerCli commandlets, then we don't have that same ability to know exactly what's going to be there. And if you think about the way that PowerShell works and some of the commandlets that we've introduced to make your life easier, things like the invoke VM guest script and some of the in-guest commandlets require you to install things like VIX. And also OpenVM console requires you to have the VMRC installed. And what we do is we install that as part of the PowerCli installable, which puts the snap-in in there. So, could we create a module? Yeah, we probably could create a module pretty easily, but you'd still have to install this stuff. So is it going to get you away from being able to not have to install PowerCli and just drop it into a certain folder? Probably not. So, what would your response be, and why would you like modules is my question back to you guys.
Yeah, and some of the return points that Ernest had are some of the similar things that I had done as well. Was being able to dynamically load the PowerCli on a system that may not have had it. Simply being able to copy it over and load it in from a shared location.
Right.
Being able to load it into various script editors, editing environments, make that a little bit simpler. But yeah, I
Sure.
mean that's I think those are the primary drivers for
Yeah.
that request.
Uh, And the main reason I get from people when they do want modules is the ability to Xcopy deploy. Xcopy deploy my module to a number of different virtual machines. And then have all the abilities that come with that. But as I mentioned, it's not as simple as us just creating a module and then saying, "Here you go, job done." We've got the other things to think about as well. The stuff that we've introduced to make your life easier and make the great commandlets that we have at the moment. We have to think about how they are going to react if you run those and you don't have the bits installed. So we're definitely thinking about it, and thanks for bringing it up. That's definitely the kind of stuff I want to hear. The more times I hear it, the higher priority it gets. So keep bringing it up.
All right, excellent. Yeah, I think that was the uh, the bulk of that. So, tell us a little bit about this. Some of the resources that you have out there on the screen.
Yeah, these are just some general resources that I put on there. I've already mentioned the PowerCLI blog. You obviously need to go download PowerCLI and download the latest version. Test it out. Let me know what you think. Come up with some cool scripts. I want to see lots of tagging scripts. I've got some great ideas in mind. I'm sure other people have. Not a lot of people know that we have a cmdlet reference online as well. We also have the release notes. The release notes will give you the latest information. It will tell you about any bugs that we've fixed or any enhancements that we've made or any bugs that are currently there. So check those out. Go to the PowerCLI community. The PowerCLI community is awesome. Everybody just kind of goes on there, answers questions. When they can get in front of Luke, they'll answer the questions. And these are the guys that seriously sit there and write the scripts. One thing I would say about the community is they react better if you actually give it a go. So don't go on there and say, I want a script that's going to automate my entire environment, please. And expect that script to be written for you.
And there are
But
people in
actually
the
go on
community
there and
that do that.
say, yeah, there are people that ask that kind of question. I want a script that gives me this information. And with no even here's what I've tried or what I've come up with, and here's a stumbling block that I've hit. If people see you trying it, they're more likely to help you out, and you also give them a base, and you learn where you went wrong. So show that you're eager to learn this stuff. The other one is the vSphere Automation blog. There's general automation blogs on there, not just PowerCLI, but there are PowerCLI stuff on there as well. Everybody should have luked.info, as their startup page. I don't care about bookmarking it. Have it as your startup page, so as soon as you launch your browser, this blog comes up and you read that information. My blog, you can bookmark that if you like. Don't have it as your startup page. And if all else fails, Google PowerCLI with the question and see what comes back.
I've found that Twitter using PowerCLI as a hashtag has also been pretty responsive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've often got Twitter open. I don't monitor it frequently, but I do certainly have a column for the PowerCLI hashtag, and I try and help out wherever possible there. There's also a bunch of different books that have been released with PowerCLI in them or about PowerCLI. The latest ones to note are the VMware vSphere PowerCLI reference, which is actually more of a reference book. It will give you a bunch of scripts. And they actually produced a module as well. I say we actually produced a module as well with all of the scripts in there. So you can actually download the scripts and you can look at them and adjust them for your environment as well as know how they work with the book. And then the latest book that's been released is Learning PowerCLI by Robert. And I'm not even going to pronounce his last name because I will absolutely kill it. He's a Dutch guy. Check out the book. It's it's a great book if you want to get started. If you want to look at all the help information about PowerCLI, about how it works.
I have to jump. Go ahead.
Another book that's due to come out soon as well, that's been announced, is Luke Deakins is writing a specific book on performance reporting with PowerCLI. This is going to be a great book. I know it already. I haven't even seen the book. I'm going to get it. And if you're interested in performance metrics, finding out what your virtual machines are doing, Luke is a superb script writer. He's got a superb way of telling people how it works. So this is going to be a fantastic book.
I agree 100%. Now, I have to say, I do see a slightly glaring omission in your further reading. There's an updated section in the Mastering vSphere 5.5 book on getting started with PowerCLI as well.
Of course there is. I do apologize, John. And well done for getting your book in there yet.
Well, it doesn't hurt my feelings any, but I figured it was worth pointing out.
Absolutely worth pointing out, Josh. It's a great book, and I suggest everybody buys it.
Well, thank you for that. All right,
Yeah,
great. Well, Alan, I don't see any other questions from anybody. If anybody wants to raise their hand, if they're in a relatively quiet area, Alan, if you have a few more minutes, we'll see if anybody else has any questions.
absolutely. I think it's probably just us left on here. Everybody else has gone to get their dinner, Josh.
No, you are incorrect. We still have a good number of live attendees. We had a solid number this evening, but I'm not seeing any hands up. So that being said, we're gonna go ahead and close this out. We'll stop the recording in a moment. If people want to hang out and chat for a few minutes, we'll be able to do that as well. As is the benefit of joining the vBrownBag podcast live. Thanks again to you, Alan, for coming on and showing us some really amazing stuff. I know we're all pretty excited about the updates in 5.5 R2, or I guess R2, and definitely looking forward to seeing that fling come to life.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for tuning into the vBrownBag podcast. If you could jump on iTunes, give us some comments and feedback about what we're doing. Let us know how you like the podcast. And if you can, jump on and do the community survey. Let us know how the participation in the community has affected you and your career. You could get that at a bit.ly link/vBrownBag survey. So this is your host tonight, Josh Atwell, signing out. Have a good night.
Good night.